The diplomatic station called Harmony's Edge floated in the darkness of space like a massive steel flower. Inside its bright corridors, thousands of alien beings moved with nervous energy. Today was special. Today, humans would meet the galaxy for the first time. Captain Hyunwoo walked through the main hall with his daughter Jia holding his hand. The little girl was only 5 years old, with bright eyes that looked at everything with wonder. She wore a small blue dress that her mother had picked out before they left Earth. Around them, aliens of all shapes and sizes stared at the humans with curiosity. Some aliens looked like giant insects with shining shells. Others had too many arms or eyes. Some floated in the air without legs. Jia pointed at each one and giggled with delight. She thought they all looked wonderful and interesting. Hyunwoo smiled at his daughter, though his heart felt heavy with worry. He knew something dangerous was coming. The station's speakers crackled to life. A voice spoke in the common galactic language, which Hyunwoo's translator chip converted to Korean in his mind. The voice belonged to Chancellor Tikvesh, the leader of the Galactic Council. He was an insect-like being with clicking mandibles and hundreds of tiny eyes. Attention all delegates. The Vraxis ship has entered the system. They will dock in 1 standard hour. The effect was immediate. Aliens throughout the station stopped moving. Some made sounds of fear. Others ran toward the exits. A group of warrior-looking creatures in heavy armor immediately started checking their weapons. The peaceful atmosphere turned cold and frightening. Jia tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, why is everyone scared?" Hyunwoo knelt down to look into his daughter's eyes. "Some of the aliens here are afraid of the new visitors coming to the station." "Why? Are they mean?" Before Hyunwoo could answer, a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms approached them. This was Ambassador Kira from the Heptari Collective. She had been kind to the humans since they arrived. Now her face showed concern. "Captain Hyunwoo, you must take your child to the human quarters immediately. Lock the doors. Do not let her out until the Vraxis have settled into their section of the station." "I don't understand," Hyunwoo said, though he did understand. He had read the reports. "Why is everyone so afraid?" Kira's voice dropped to a whisper. "The Vraxis are not like other species. They are dragons, Captain. Real dragons from nightmares. They breathe fire that can melt steel. They have powers that can crush your mind without touching you. And the one coming here is the worst of them all." Another alien joined them. This one looked like a giant lizard covered in scars. He wore the uniform of a military general. His name was Thulkar, and he commanded the station's security forces. "The one coming is called Kravath," Thulkar said in a deep voice. "We call him Kravath, the Destroyer. He has ended 17 civilizations. He has burned 1,000 worlds. His ship is covered in the names of his enemies, and there is no more room to write new names." Jia listened to this with wide eyes. "He sounds sad," she said softly. The adults looked at her with surprise. Thulkar made a sound like a laugh, but it was not a happy sound. "Sad? Little human, he is not sad. He is death itself. He has not attended a peaceful meeting in 300 years. No one knows why he is coming now." Kira touched Hyunwoo's arm gently. "Please, Captain, for your daughter's safety. The Vraxis hate most species, but we do not know how they feel about humans. You are new to the galaxy. Do not let Kravath be your daughter's first real encounter with alien life." Hyunwoo nodded slowly. "I understand. Thank you for the warning." He picked up Jia and started walking toward the human quarters. Behind them, more announcements echoed through the station. All non-essential personnel were ordered to their rooms. Security teams moved into position. The docking bay was cleared of everyone except the absolute minimum crew needed to receive the Vraxis ship. As they walked, Jia looked over her father's shoulder at all the scared aliens. "Daddy, I think the dragon must be very lonely if everyone is scared of him. Maybe he just wants friends." "Maybe, little one. But some beings are dangerous even when they want friends. We have to be careful." They reached the human quarters, a small section of the station that had been prepared for Earth's delegation. Lieutenant Bora was waiting there. She was Hyunwoo's second in command and had been a soldier for 15 years. Even she looked nervous. "Captain, I've sealed all the doors. Our team is ready if there's any trouble. The council has asked that. You attend the greeting ceremony, but I strongly suggest you refuse." Hyunwoo set Jia down and looked at his daughter. She was playing with her stuffed bunny, Mr. Floppy, completely unaware of the danger everyone else felt. He made a decision. "I'll attend the ceremony. Someone from Earth needs to be there." "But Jia stays here with you, Bora. Don't let her out of your sight." "Yes, sir." Hyunwoo knelt down and hugged his daughter. "Be good for Lieutenant Bora, okay? Daddy has to go to a meeting. I'll be back soon." "Okay, Daddy." "Can you tell the dragon I said hello?" Hyunwoo smiled despite his worry. "I'll try, little one." He left the quarters and headed toward the main docking bay. The corridors were now almost empty. Emergency lights flashed red along the walls. Through the windows he could see the Vraxis ship approaching. It was huge and black, covered in strange symbols that seemed to move and shift. The ship looked like it was made of darkness itself. In the docking bay, a small group waited. Chancellor Tikvesh stood in the center with several guards around him. Other ambassadors watched from behind protective barriers. Everyone wore armor or had shields activated. Hyunwoo felt very small and very human among all these advanced aliens. "Captain Hyunwoo," Tikvesh clicked. "You should not be here." "Humanity deserves to witness this moment," Hyunwoo replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. The Vraxis ship docked with a sound like thunder. The airlock began to open and vapor poured out. The temperature in the bay rose immediately. Through the vapor, a massive shadow moved. Red eyes glowed in the darkness. The eyes were the size of dinner plates, and they burned with an inner fire. Then Cravath emerged, and every being in the docking bay felt their hearts stop. He was enormous, at least 12 feet tall, covered in scales as black as space itself. His wings, folded against his back, could probably span the entire width of the docking bay. Smoke drifted from his nostrils. His claws scraped against the metal floor, leaving marks in the reinforced steel. When he breathed, the air shimmered with heat. But it was not his physical presence that made everyone afraid. It was the feeling that came from him, a psychic weight that pressed down on every mind. The feeling of dying stars, of ancient anger, of power so vast it could not be measured. Several guards fell to their knees. One ambassador fainted. Cravath's burning eyes swept across the gathered beings. His voice when he spoke was like rocks grinding together. "I have come to see these humans everyone speaks of. Where are they?" Before anyone could answer, a sound echoed through the docking bay. A small voice, singing a happy song. Everyone turned in horror toward the sound. Little Jia had wandered out of the human quarters, following pretty glowing crystals that lined the corridor. She had found her way to the docking bay entrance. Now she stood there, holding Mr. Floppy, looking up at the massive dragon with curious, fearless eyes. Cravath's head turned toward her, his red eyes focused on the small human child. The temperature in the bay rose even higher. Everyone held their breath, waiting for disaster, and Jia smiled at the dragon and waved hello. Time seemed to stop. The massive dragon stared at the tiny human child. The child stared back at the dragon without any fear at all. Every other being in the docking bay felt frozen, unable to move or speak. Hyunwoo's heart nearly exploded with terror. His daughter, his precious Jia, stood 50 feet away from the most dangerous creature in the known galaxy. He wanted to run to her, grab her, pull her to safety, but his body would not obey him. The psychic pressure from Cravath held everyone in place like insects trapped in amber. Lieutenant Bora's voice crackled over the communication system from the human quarters. She sounded panicked. "Captain, Jia is gone." I turned my back for just 1 second and she, oh God. The security cameras show her at the docking bay. "Sir, I'm coming." "No!" Hyunwoo tried to shout, but his voice came out as a whisper. "Stay back. If you rush in, he might see it as an attack." Chancellor Tikvesh clicked his mandibles rapidly, a sign of extreme stress. He spoke in a voice so quiet it was barely audible. "Nobody move. Do not make any sudden actions. The child is already dead, but perhaps we can prevent a massacre. But Cravath did not attack. He tilted his massive head, studying the small human with an expression that was hard to read. His red eyes, which burned with the fury of stars, seemed to dim slightly. The psychic pressure that radiated from him wavered, became confused rather than aggressive. Gia took a step forward. Just one small step, but it made every alien gasp in horror. She held up her stuffed bunny, Mr. Floppy, so the dragon could see it better. "Hello, Mr. Dragon," Gia said in her clear, sweet voice. "Are you lost? My daddy says this is a place where everyone comes to be friends. You don't have to be scared." Cravath made a sound deep in his chest. It rumbled through the docking bay like distant thunder. His claws scraped against the floor. Smoke poured from his nostrils in thick clouds. Everyone waited for the fire, for the end, for the moment when the little girl would be turned to ash. But the sound was not a growl of anger. It was confusion, perhaps even surprise, scared. Cravath's voice was quieter now, less like grinding rocks and more like a normal voice, though still impossibly deep. "You think I am scared, small creature?" "Everyone seems scared of you," Gia explained patiently as if she were talking to another child. "But I think maybe you're scared too. It's okay. When I'm scared, I hold Mr. Floppy. He makes me feel better. Would you like to hold him?" She walked forward again, this time 3 steps. She was now within reach of Cravath's claws. One swipe could end her life in an instant. Hyunwoo felt tears streaming down his face. He pushed against the psychic pressure with all his willpower, trying desperately to move, to do something, anything to save his daughter. Cravath lowered his massive head until his snout was level with Gia. Up close, his scales were not just black, but held swirling patterns of deep red and purple like dying galaxies. His eyes, each one larger than Gia's entire head, focused on her with an intensity that should have been terrifying. "I have destroyed planets," Cravath said slowly. "I have made species extinct. I have crushed armies beneath my claws. Why do you not run from me?" Gia thought about this question seriously. She tilted her head the same way Cravath had tilted his, a mirror of the dragon's gesture. "Because you look sad. Your eyes are angry, but behind the angry they look so sad and lonely. Did someone hurt you? Is that why you hurt others?" For the first time in recorded history, Cravath the Destroyer was silent. His mouth opened slightly, showing teeth as long as swords, but no fire came out. No words either. He simply stared at this impossible small being, who somehow saw through centuries of rage and violence to the pain underneath. Throughout the station, millions of aliens watched through cameras and monitors. News had spread instantly across the galaxy through faster-than-light communications. On 1,000 worlds, beings held their breath as they watched a human child do what no army had ever accomplished: make Cravath hesitate. Gia smiled at the dragon. It was the same warm smile she gave to her father, to her friends at school, to stray cats and hurt birds. A smile of pure kindness without any hidden motives. "It's okay to be sad, but you don't have to be alone anymore. You can have friends here if you want." Then she did something that made the entire galaxy gasp in shock. She stepped right up to Cravath's massive snout, stood on her tiptoes, and gently kissed the scarred scales right between his nostrils. The kiss lasted only a second. A tiny gesture from a tiny being, but its effect was enormous. Cravath's red eyes widened. His psychic presence, which had been pressing down on everyone like a crushing weight, suddenly vanished completely. The dragon made a sound that no Vraxis had made in living memory, a low, rumbling purr that vibrated through the entire docking bay. Small flames flickered around his head, but they were not aggressive. They danced in the air like fireflies, beautiful and gentle. The heat that poured from his body became warm instead of burning. And something happened to his eyes. The burning rage that had defined them for centuries faded, replaced by something else: confusion, wonder, and perhaps, after hundreds of years, a tiny spark of hope. Cravath slowly, carefully extended one massive claw. It was as big as Gia's entire body. At the tip of that claw, talons that had ripped apart starships moved with impossible gentleness to accept Mr. Floppy from the little girl's hands. "Thank you," Cravath said in a voice that now sounded almost vulnerable. "I have never. No one has ever." He could not finish the sentence. The psychic pressure returned, but it was completely different now. Instead of crushing weight, it felt warm, protective. It wrapped around Gia like a blanket, making sure she was safe and comfortable. The spell that had frozen everyone else broke. Hyunwoo ran forward, his legs finally obeying him. He reached his daughter and pulled her behind him, putting himself between Gia and the dragon. His hands shook, but he stood firm. "Please," Hyunwoo said, trying to keep his voice steady. "She's just a child. She doesn't understand danger. If you want to hurt someone for what she did, hurt me instead." Cravath looked at Hyunwoo with those ancient eyes. For a moment, the old rage flickered back. How dare the small being command him? How dare a human order Cravath the Destroyer to do anything? But then Gia peeked out from behind her father's legs. "Daddy, don't be silly. Mr. Dragon is nice. He's going to be our friend. Right, Mr. Dragon?" The rage died before it could truly form. Cravath looked at the stuffed bunny in his claw, then at the child, then at the father protecting his young. Something in his expression changed. The hardness that had defined his features for centuries softened just slightly. "Your offspring shows no fear," Cravath said to Hyunwoo. "This is not foolishness or ignorance." She looked into my eyes and saw truth. "How is this possible?" "I don't know," Hyunwoo admitted, still shaking. "Gia has always been like this. She sees the good in everyone." "There is no good in me," Cravath said, but his voice held doubt now instead of certainty. "That's not true," Gia protested. She pushed past her father's protective stance and looked up at the dragon again. "You didn't hurt me. You could have, but you didn't. That means there's good in you. You just forgot it was there." Chancellor Tikvesh finally found his voice. He stepped forward on shaking legs. "Lord Cravath, we apologize for this incident. The human child did not understand protocol. We will ensure she is confined to quarters for the remainder of your stay." Cravath's head snapped toward the Chancellor. His eyes flared bright red again for just a moment. "No, the small one will not be confined. She gave me a gift. No one has given me a gift in 300 years. I wish to give her something in return." The dragon created small balls of plasma that floated in the air. But these were not weapons. They were shaped like butterflies, glowing in beautiful colors of blue and purple and green. They danced around Gia, who laughed with pure delight and tried to touch them. They were warm but not burning, gentle despite being made of fire. "Pretty," Gia giggled, spinning in circles as the plasma butterflies flew around her. "Look, Daddy. He made me butterflies!" Hyunwoo stared in amazement. Around the docking bay, aliens slowly emerged from their hiding spots, unable to believe what they were seeing. Cravath the Destroyer, the scourge of the galaxy, the ender of civilizations, was creating toys for a human child. News of the kiss spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On every civilized world, beings gathered around screens and holographic displays to watch the recorded footage. A human child, barely 3 feet tall, kissing the snout of Cravath the Destroyer. It seemed impossible. It was impossible. Yet it had happened. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with shocked conversation. Delegates from hundreds of species shouted questions and theories. Some accused the humans of using mind control technology. Others suggested pheromones or chemical weapons. A few religious groups claimed it was divine intervention. Everyone had an opinion, but no one had an answer. Ambassador Chira stood at her podium, her forearms gesturing as she spoke. "We have analyzed every scan, every sensor reading. The child used nothing but simple affection. No technology, no weapons, no tricks, just kindness." "Impossible!" roared a delegate from the Thorian Empire. He was a massive being covered in thick armor plating. "The Vraxes cannot be pacified by kindness. They respect only strength. This must be some kind of human trap." Chancellor Tikvesh clicked his mandibles together, calling for silence. Whatever the explanation, the result is undeniable. For the first time in 3 centuries, Cravath has not attacked anyone. He has not threatened anyone. He is currently in Conference Room 7 having tea with Captain Hyunwoo and his daughter. Tea, my fellow delegates. The Destroyer is drinking tea like a civilized being. The chamber erupted in fresh chaos. Several delegates demanded immediate investigation. Others called for the humans to be expelled from the station for their dangerous and unpredictable behavior. A few wise beings sat quietly, watching and thinking about what this might mean for the future. In Conference Room 7, a very strange tea party was taking place. The room had been built to accommodate large species, but Cravath still had to fold his massive body carefully to fit inside. Gia sat on a cushion across from him, pouring pretend tea from a toy tea set that Lieutenant Bora had brought from the human quarters. "This is Mr. Floppy's cup," Gia explained. setting down a tiny plastic cup in front of the stuffed bunny, which Cravath had placed gently on the table. "And this is your cup, Mr. Dragon? Oh wait, I should ask your real name. Daddy says it's rude not to use people's real names." "I am called Cravath," the dragon said, his deep voice somehow soft in this small room with this small being. "That's a nice name. I'm Gia. Would you like sugar in your pretend tea, Mr. Cravath?" "I have never had tea," Cravath admitted. "Pretend or otherwise?" Hyunwoo sat nearby, still not quite believing this was real. He kept expecting to wake up from a dream. Or a nightmare. He was not sure which this was anymore. Bora stood by the door, her hand near her weapon, though she knew any weapon she carried would be useless against Avraxis. "Mr. Cravath," Gia said seriously, "why does everyone say you destroyed planets?" "That seems mean." Hyunwoo tensed, but Cravath only looked at the child with those ancient red eyes. "Because I did destroy planets, small Gia. I have done terrible things. I have hurt many beings. Why?" Such a simple question. Such a powerful question. Cravath was quiet for a long moment, staring at the stuffed bunny as if it might hold answers. "Because I was hurt first," Cravath finally said. "Because on my world, showing kindness meant death. Because I learned to strike first before others could strike me. Because after centuries of fighting, I forgot there was any other way to exist." "That's very sad," Gia said. She got up from her cushion, walked around the table, and patted Cravath's enormous claw with her tiny hand. "But you don't have to do that anymore. You can learn nice things again. My teacher says it's never too late to learn." Cravath looked at his claw, at the small hand patting it so trustingly. A single drop of liquid fell from one of his eyes and sizzled on the table, burning a small mark in the metal. Were those tears? Could dragons cry? "Your offspring is remarkable," Cravath said to Hyunwoo. "How did you teach her such fearlessness?" Hyunwoo shook his head. "I didn't teach her to be fearless. I teach her to be careful, to be safe. But Gia has always had this gift. She sees the person behind the appearance. She sees the heart, not the armor. Humans are not powerful," Cravath observed. "You have no psychic abilities. Your bodies are fragile. Your technology is primitive compared to most species. Yet this small one defeated me with nothing but a kiss. Explain this to me." Hyunwoo thought carefully about his answer. Maybe that's exactly why she could do it. "We humans are weak in many ways. We know what it feels like to be hurt, to be scared, to be alone. So we learn to recognize those feelings in others. We learn that sometimes the strongest, scariest beings are the ones who are hurting the most inside." Cravath processed this in silence. Outside the conference room, hundreds of cameras recorded every moment. Scientists scrambled to understand. Military leaders debated whether this represented a threat or an opportunity. Politicians argued about what it meant for galactic power structures. But inside the room, there was only a dragon, a man, and a child, sharing pretend tea and real conversation. Over the next few days, something extraordinary happened. Other aliens began approaching the human delegation cautiously. They had seen that humans were not dangerous despite being strange. More importantly, they had seen that humans could do something no other species had managed: connect with the impossible. Dr. Taeyang, a human scientist specializing in psychology, was invited to present his theories to the Galactic Council. He stood at the podium, a small human among giants, and explained his ideas. "Humans evolved on a dangerous world," Dr. Taeyang said. "We were surrounded by predators. We were not the strongest or fastest or most deadly, so we developed different strengths. We learned to read emotions. We learned to build connections. We learned that cooperation and empathy were better survival tools than claws or venom. But many species evolved with predators," argued a delegate. "Why are humans different?" "Because we also evolved with complex social structures," Dr. Taeyang continued. "We learned to live in large groups, to care for our weak and elderly, to raise children as a community. And human children, in particular, are born completely helpless. They must learn everything from adults. This means they come into the world without prejudice or fear. They learn what to be afraid of. But until they learn it, they can see beings like Cravath without the weight of history and reputation." General Thulkar spoke up from his seat. "You are saying the child's ignorance was her strength?" "Not ignorance," Dr. Taeyang corrected gently. "Innocence." Gia saw Cravath as he truly is, not as history has painted him. She saw past the destroyer to the being underneath, and because she showed him kindness without fear, she reminded him that he is more than just a weapon. Throughout the station, other humans began demonstrating this unique ability. Commander Yoon Seo, a military officer, sat down with a delegation from the notoriously aggressive Vorlith species. Instead of discussing weapons and defense, she asked about their art. The Vorlith, surprised by this approach, opened up about their culture. Within hours, they had signed a preliminary trade agreement. Hanul, a cultural attaché, shared human music with the Kickstar, a species of telepaths who experienced sound as emotion. When they heard a symphony by Beethoven, several Kickstar wept openly. They had never encountered such emotional complexity translated into sound. They immediately requested more cultural exchanges, but not everyone was happy about humanity's success. In a dark corner of the station, far from the diplomatic areas, three beings met in secret. They wore hoods to hide their identities. They represented species and organizations that profited from conflict and war. "The humans are dangerous," hissed one of the hooded figures. "If they can pacify the Vraxis, they can pacify anyone. Do you understand what this means? Peace is bad for business. War is what drives the economy. We must act," agreed another. "But carefully. If we attack them openly, we will look like villains. The galaxy is watching the humans with fascination. We must make them afraid instead of fascinated." "I have a plan," said the third figure. "We discredit them. We make them look weak and foolish, and then we eliminate the child. If Gia dies, especially if it appears the Vraxis killed her, it will reignite the old fears. Kraveth will return to being a monster, and the galaxy will remember why they need weapons and armies." The three figures shook hands, sealing their dark agreement. Above them, through the station windows, stars shone peacefully. But peace, they knew, was fragile. And they intended to shatter it. Back in the human quarters, Gia was getting ready for bed. She wore pajamas covered in pictures of stars and rockets. Hyunwoo tucked her in and kissed her forehead. "Did you have fun today, little one?" "Yes, Daddy. Mr. Kraveth is so nice. He told me stories about his home planet. Did you know they have flowers made of fire there? I want to visit someday." Hyunwoo smiled, though worry gnawed at his heart. His daughter had no idea how much danger she had been in, how much danger she might still be in. The galaxy was watching her now. That kind of attention could be dangerous. The summit continued, and every day brought new surprises. Humans, it seemed, had a talent for making friends with species that everyone else considered impossible to befriend. It was not magic or technology. It was something simpler and stranger. They actually cared about other beings. In the main assembly hall, Dr. Tae Yang gave another presentation. This time he brought visual aids showing human history. Images of Earth appeared on the massive screens showing cities and forests and oceans. "Our planet is beautiful but dangerous," Dr. Tae Yang explained. "We have predators, diseases, natural disasters. For most of our history, humans struggled just to survive. We learned that working together was better than fighting alone. A human by itself is weak, but humans together can accomplish amazing things." An alien delegate raised several tentacles to ask a question. "But you also have wars. Humans fight each other. How can you claim to be peaceful?" Dr. Tae Yang nodded sadly. "You are right. Humans do fight. We have conflicts and disagreements, but we also have something else. We have the ability to forgive, to change, to learn from our mistakes. Every war in our history taught us more about the cost of violence. We are not perfect. We never claim to be. But we try to be better." He showed more images. Humans of different colors and cultures working together. Humans caring for injured animals. Humans building homes for those who had lost everything in disasters. Humans teaching children to read and write. "This is what humans do," Dr. Taeyang said simply. "We help. We connect. We care. It is not always easy. Sometimes we fail. But we keep trying. And when we meet new beings like all of you, we try to see you as people, not as threats or tools or enemies. Just people who want to live good lives like we do." The hall was quiet as the delegates absorbed this. Some looked thoughtful. Others looked skeptical. But many looked hopeful, as if Dr. Taeyang had put words to something they had felt but could not express. Later that day, Kravath requested a private meeting with Yunwoo. They met in an observation room with windows looking out at the stars. The dragon stood at the window, his massive form silhouetted against the cosmos. "I wish to tell you something," Kravath said without turning around. "Something I have told no one in 300 years. Hyunwoo waited patiently. He had learned that sometimes silence was the best response. I was not always a destroyer, Cravath continued. When I was young, very young, I believed in peace. I believed beings could coexist without violence. My homeworld, however, taught me differently. The Vraxis world is harsh. Only the strong survive. The weak are killed or enslaved. I tried to protect the weak, and I was punished terribly for it. Cravath's claws scraped against the window frame, leaving marks in the metal. They broke my body and my spirit. They taught me that kindness was weakness, that mercy was foolishness, that the only way to be safe was to be the most dangerous thing in any room. So I became that. I became so dangerous that everyone feared me. I thought fear would keep me safe. But it only made me more alone. What changed? Hyunwoo asked gently. Your daughter looked at me without fear, Cravath said. Not because she is brave, though she is, but because she does not understand that she should fear me. She looked past everything I have done, past my reputation and my power, and saw something I thought was dead. She saw the being I was before I became a destroyer. The dragon finally turned to face Hyunwoo. His red eyes no longer burned with rage. They looked tired and sad and maybe a little bit hopeful. I want to change, Cravath said. I want to be something other than fear and violence. But I do not know how. For 300 years I have only known one way to exist. How does one change after so long? Hyunwoo thought about this carefully. The same way my daughter learned to walk. One step at a time. You will stumble. You will make mistakes. But if you keep trying, eventually walking becomes natural. Being kind can become natural too, even if it feels strange at first. Will you help me? Cravath asked. Will you teach me how to be civilized? I will try, Hyunwoo promised. But I think you should spend more time with Jia. She is a better teacher than I am. Over the following days, something beautiful happened. Cravath began attending the summit meetings properly. He sat in on discussions about trade agreements and cultural exchanges. At first, the other delegates were terrified. They expected him to threaten and demand. But Cravath only listened and asked thoughtful questions. When a dispute arose between two species over territory rights, everyone expected violence. Instead, Cravath suggested a compromise that satisfied both sides. The delegates stared in shock. Since when did the destroyer mediate peace? Between meetings, Cravath spent time with Jia. The little girl showed him human games and songs. She taught him how to draw pictures with crayons. She introduced him to the concept of humor, and told him silly jokes that made no sense but made him laugh anyway. It was a sound the galaxy had never heard before, Cravath laughing. But not everyone was happy about these changes. The three hooded figures continued their planning. They had recruited others to their cause. Beings who profited from war, who feared peace, who believed the galaxy needed conflict to function. The time is almost right, one of them said at their secret meeting. The humans are relaxed now. They think they are safe. Soon we will strike and everything will return to the proper order. They called themselves the Krell Syndicate, though few knew of their existence. They had operated in the shadows for centuries, manipulating conflicts, selling weapons, growing rich on the suffering of others. The humans threatened their entire business model. If humans succeeded in creating lasting peace, the Syndicate would lose everything. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Bora grew worried. Her military training made her suspicious of how well things were going. Peace did not come this easily. Someone somewhere would try to disrupt it. She increased security around the human quarters and especially around Jia. She could not explain why, but she felt danger approaching. One evening, Hyunwoo found his daughter in the observation deck with Cravath. They were looking at the stars together. Jia sat on the dragon's massive claw like it was a chair, completely comfortable and safe. Daddy, Jia called out when she saw him. Mr. Cravath is telling me about his home planet. It has 3 suns, and the flowers there sing when the wind blows. Can we visit someday? Cravath looked at Hyunwoo with an expression that might have been a smile, though it was hard to tell on a dragon's face. I have extended an invitation to the human delegation to visit the Vraxis homeworld. I believe my people need to meet beings like your daughter. They need to learn what I am learning. That would be a great honor, Hyunwoo said carefully. The Vraxis homeworld had been closed to outsiders for thousands of years. An invitation there was unprecedented. There is more, Cravath said. I have sent a message to our Empress, Shivara the Ancient. I told her about Jia, about humans, about the possibility of change. She has agreed to open communications with your species. This is the first step toward formal relations between our peoples. Hyunwoo felt his heart swell with pride and hope. His daughter, his beautiful, innocent daughter, had achieved something diplomats and warriors could not. She had opened a door that had been locked for centuries. But that night, as Jia slept peacefully in her bed, dark forces moved in the shadows. The Krell Syndicate had finalized their plan. Tomorrow would be the celebration feast, where all species would gather to honor the new friendships formed at the summit. It would be the perfect time to strike. They had acquired a rare poison, one that was deadly to humans but harmless to most other species. They would introduce it into the human food. Jia would die and Kravath would be blamed. The evidence would be planted carefully. The peace would shatter, and war would return to the galaxy. As the station's lights dimmed for the night cycle, two futures hung in balance. One future held peace, understanding, and cooperation across the stars. The other held war, profit, and the continuation of ancient hatreds. Which future would emerge depended on the events of the next day. The celebration feast was the largest gathering in the station's history. The main hall had been transformed into a beautiful space, filled with decorations from hundreds of worlds. Tables overflowed with foods from across the galaxy. Music played, blending sounds from different species into something new and strange and wonderful. Jia wore her best dress, the one with flowers embroidered on it. She held Mr. Floppy in one hand and her father's hand in the other. Her eyes were wide with excitement as she looked at all the colors and lights and interesting beings gathered together. "This is like a birthday party for everyone," she said happily. Kravath stood near the entrance, his massive form decorated with ceremonial crystals that the other Vraxes had sent as a sign of respect. He had never attended such a gathering peacefully before. It felt strange and uncomfortable, but also good. When he saw Jia, his eyes brightened, and he made the rumbling purr sound that everyone had learned meant he was happy. "Little Jia," Kravath greeted her, lowering his head so she could pat his snout in greeting. "You look very beautiful today." "Thank you, Mr. Kravath. You look beautiful too. Your crystals are so shiny." Around them, other species gathered. The fear that had been present at the beginning of the summit was gone. Now there was curiosity and hope. Delegates approached the humans asking questions about Earth and its cultures. Some brought gifts. Others simply wanted to shake hands, a human custom that had become popular among the aliens. Chancellor Tikvesh stood at the center podium and raised his forearms for attention. The hall grew quiet. "Today we celebrate something unprecedented," Tikvesh announced. "For the first time in galactic history, every species represented here has signed peace agreements. We have established trade routes, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. This was thought impossible just weeks ago. But the humans showed us something important. They showed us that understanding begins with trying to understand." Applause filled the hall. A thunderous sound from hundreds of different species making noise in hundreds of different ways. "In particular," Tikvesh continued, "we must thank young Jia who taught us all a lesson in courage and compassion. Please everyone join me in honoring her." The applause grew louder. Jia hid her face against her father's leg, embarrassed by all the attention. But she peeked out and waved shyly at everyone, which made them applaud even more. The feast began. Foods were shared across tables. Humans tried alien dishes, aliens tried human dishes. Some foods were wonderful, others terrible. But everyone laughed and enjoyed the experience together. Music played, and some beings even attempted to dance, though their different body types made for amusing results. In the shadows, 3 hooded figures watched and waited. They had poisoned several dishes at the human table. The poison was in the drinks, in the desserts, in the bread. It was colorless, tasteless, and would act quickly. Soon the humans would start dying and their plan would be complete. But they had not accounted for one thing. They had not understood what they were actually fighting against. They thought they fought against humans, but they were really fighting against something much more powerful: genuine connection and friendship. Lieutenant Bora noticed something odd. A server bringing food to the human table moved strangely, like someone trying very hard to look normal but not quite succeeding. Her military instincts flared. She stepped forward to inspect the food. At the same moment, Kravath's head suddenly snapped up. His psychic senses, which could detect danger across vast distances, suddenly screamed alarm. He did not know what the danger was, only that it was close and aimed at Jia. "Stop!" Kravath and Bora shouted at the same time. The server panicked and dropped the tray, running toward the exit. Bora tackled him before he could escape. The tray crashed to the floor and green liquid spread across the metal. Where it touched the floor, the metal hissed and bubbled. Poison chaos erupted. Security forces rushed in. Other servers were grabbed and questioned. Several dropped their trays and tried to flee. Within minutes, 12 conspirators were captured. But the poison had already been spread across multiple dishes at the human table. Yunwoo looked at the food in horror. He had been seconds away from letting Jia eat something. His daughter could have died while he stood right next to her. General Tolkar examined the poison quickly. "This is Krell work," he growled. "The Syndicate. They profit from war and fear peace. They must have planned this to restart the conflicts." "Were they trying to kill all the humans?" asked Ambassador Chira in shock. "No," Dr. Tae-yang said quietly, his face pale as he understood. "They were trying to kill Jia specifically, and they would have blamed Krevath. If the child who befriended the dragon was killed by the dragon, it would prove that the Vraxis cannot change. It would prove that trusting them was foolish. Fear would return, and with fear comes war." All eyes turned to Krevath. The dragon stood very still, his scales darkening with rage. The temperature in the hall rose. Smoke poured from his nostrils. His psychic presence expanded, pressing down on everyone with the weight of dying stars. "The old Krevath, the destroyer, was rising to the surface. They tried to hurt the small one," Krevath said in a voice like grinding mountains. "They tried to hurt Jia. They will burn. I will burn their worlds to ash. I will destroy everything they love. I will show them what it means to threaten what is precious to me." The hall grew cold with fear despite the heat. This was the Krevath everyone knew. This was the monster that nightmares were made of. The peace that had been built over weeks was crumbling in seconds. But then a small hand touched Krevath's claw. "Mr. Krevath," Jia said softly, "please don't be angry. I'm okay, see? I'm not hurt." Krevath looked down at her and something broke inside him, or perhaps something healed. The rage was still there, burning hot and demanding revenge. But so was something else. Love, protectiveness, the desire to be better than his anger. "They tried to kill you," Krevath said, his voice shaking with emotion. "They would have used your death to destroy everything we built." "How can I not be angry?" "You can be angry," Jia said wisely. "But you don't have to be the destroyer. Being angry is okay, but destroying things won't make the anger go away. It just makes more sadness. You taught me that, remember? You told me about all the worlds you burned and how it never made you feel better." Krevath closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the rage was still there, but it was controlled. Focused. Not wild destruction, but purposeful justice. "You are right, small one," Krevath said quietly. "I will not destroy, but justice must be served." He turned to face the captured conspirators. They cowered before him, certain they were about to die. But Krevath did not kill them. Instead, he used his psychic abilities in a different way. He showed them what Jia had shown him. He made them feel what it was like to be seen with kindness instead of fear. He made them understand the value of the peace they had tried to destroy. When he released them, several of the conspirators were crying. They confessed everything, named all their associates, revealed every plan. Not because they were tortured, but because they finally understood what they had almost destroyed. Chancellor Tikvesh addressed the hall once more. "The Krell Syndicate has operated in shadows for too long. Today we bring them into the light. Every species here will work together to dismantle their operations. We will prove that peace is stronger than profit, that cooperation is more powerful than conflict." The delegates agreed unanimously. For the first time in galactic history, every species worked together toward a common goal. The feast continued, though with different food and much more security. But the mood had changed. It was no longer just celebration. It was determination. The galaxy had seen how close they came to losing everything, and they were not going to let it slip away. 3 days later, the summit officially concluded. Treaties were signed, embassies were established, trade routes were opened, and most importantly, something called the Jia Protocols were created. Dr. Tae-yang explained the protocols to the assembled delegates. "These are guidelines for future diplomatic relations. They are based on what we learned from Jia's interaction with Krevath. First, approach new species with curiosity instead of fear. Second, look for the being behind the reputation. Third, offer kindness without expecting anything in return. Fourth, remember that everyone, even the strongest and scariest, wants to be understood and accepted. The protocols were adopted by every species present. Schools across the galaxy would teach them. Diplomats would train in them. They would become the foundation of a new era of galactic peace. On the day the humans prepared to leave, Cravath came to say goodbye. He knelt down so he was at eye level with Gia. "Thank you, small one," Cravath said softly. "You gave me back something I thought was lost forever. You reminded me that I am more than what I have done. I am also what I choose to do next." Gia hugged his massive snout, her small arms barely reaching around it. "Will you visit Earth? We have lots of things you would like. We have ice cream and parks and movies, and my mom makes really good cookies." "I will visit," Cravath promised. "I will bring representatives from my people. We have much to learn from humans. And I would very much like to meet your mother and try these cookies."